Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be introducing you to Blender's workspace and explaining what tools and menus we have available to us. So once you've opened up Blender for the first time, you'll be introduced to a screen similar to this. The reason why I say similar, you may notice that the image is different and you'll be able to check the version number in the top right hand corner of this little window. If you need to update Blender, or if you think you might need to, check this version number and then go online to Blender's website and check what the current version is and simply re-download it if you need to. Now in this little window we have recent files that we've worked on, so if you're opening Blender for the first time this will be blank. And we also have a new file option with several different work modes we can jump into straight away. We also have a folder that says open to open up any other folder or file that may not appear in our recent files section. Now, for the most part, I actually don't really bother with this. I just click off and jump straight into Blender. So unless you have a specific file that was evident there, that's what I would recommend. So what do we have right here on the screen right now? Well, in the center of our screen, we have the 3D workspace. This is where we do the majority of our modeling and editing. This is where we can move things around and we can actually build our concept. We can actually change what appears in this central screen a number of ways, and the most prominent is by going to the top of the screen where we have our different workspaces. So we're currently in what's called the layout workspace, the standard default Blender workspace. However, depending on the type of project you're doing, you may want to jump into another one. For example, if you're doing a character sculpt, you may want to jump into the sculpting workspace, which not only changes the central 3D view, but it also changes the tools and menus on offer. If you're texturing, then you may want to jump into UV editing, texture paint, or the shading tab, depending on how you like texturing and shading. And of course, if you're animating, we're going to jump over to the animations tab. There's plenty of others we could take a look at, but you will choose which workspace you want to go into depending on the type of project you are creating. And for the most part, you'll actually jump back and forth between quite a few of them. That's a really important thing to focus on. Starting work in the shading tab will not lock you out of jumping back to any of the other tabs. You can move quite freely between these at any point. If we're staying at the top of the screen, we can look over to File, where we can save our work or import another project. Edit is where we have our history settings, and we also have our preferences, which is effectively the general settings for Blender. We have render and window settings, and you can dive into those as you wish. I'm not going to explain everything in great detail, that would take too long. I'm just going to give a general overview. If we look at the bar underneath that, we have several preview settings, and we also have things like the snapping tool and proportional editing. Below that, we have a very important area of Blender. And this little bar over on the far left where it says object mode is something you will be using a lot, because this is how we jump from object mode, where we simply move things around and position elements of our scene, and jump into edit mode, where we actually edit and sculpt and shape individual objects. I'll explain more about that in a future video. These bars next to it change our view settings, allow us to add new objects, and allow us to change the constraints of an object. Over on the right hand side, these are our preview settings. It will allow us to disable the grid and the axes, and also change how the actual objects in our scene appear. On the left-hand side, we have a toolbar. This toolbar corresponds to object mode. Whenever we change this, for example, if I click and go to edit mode, you can see my toolbar also changes. So in a similar way to Photoshop, depending upon what mode you're in will change the tools and settings you have available. So make sure you check that as you go. On the right-hand side, we have some navigation controls. So we have our gyro, for example, which we can click and drag to orbit our scene. On the right hand side, we have two big important sections. Our first section in the top right is our layers panel, and if you're familiar with programs like Photoshop, it works in exactly the same way. Every object is on its own layer, and we can organize that to our heart's content. In the bottom right hand corner, we have a big panel of settings, which changes depending upon which tab, which is this column of colourful icons, we have selected. So for example, if I click on the modifiers tab, which is the blue spanner, the settings change accordingly. And likewise, if I go to the material properties tab, I get a whole bunch of settings relating to the object that I have selected. This you'll become very well acquainted with. It's a very big and scary part of Blender for people who are just taking their first steps in the program. However, you'll be in this so much that you'll become really well acquainted with it and you'll get to grips with it very quickly. Lastly, at the bottom of our screen, we actually have another workspace. It doesn't look like that now, but we can actually click and drag that workspace up. And by default, Blender gives us a timeline. However, we can change what appears in this workspace by going into the top left and clicking on this little icon here and selecting what workspace we would like it to be. So for example, I can actually bring in another 3D viewport to model maybe a different side of my object. The reason why I say top left hand icon and I don't give it a descriptor is because that icon will change depending upon which workspace we're in. So for example, the timeline has a little clock, whereas the video sequencer has a little clapboard. I can also close that back down, and I can bring in other workspaces if I like. I don't tend to do that because I think that Blender gets quite cluttered. However, you can do that if you wish. So there we go. There's a basic introduction to Blender's workspace.